Okay, so one of the other mods that I've made here to the printer is basically dealing with the X-axis bearing. So as shipped, basically what they had was an arrangement of 3 of these LM8UU bearing blocks. So they basically had them in a triangle formation, and actually most of the RepRap community, this is pretty standard, the formation that they'll use. The idea is that the double row top bearing prevents it from rocking, and the third bearing is just there to keep your tilt out of it, basically if you were looking at the axis. So you always try to do things in 3s. The problem with this is these little cheap, relatively cheap bearings are sometimes noisy. These are the standard LM8UUs. And sometimes when they roll on the rod, you'll actually hear a little bit of notchiness, or you actually hear the balls. Basically what it is the balls are re-entering the recirculation track. So they go in a groove and they go through a return path and they re-enter the race and travel along the rod. So one of the things I've done is I found that they're actually sold by what was formerly QUBD. Now they're Quintessential building parts for 3D printers. Anyway, they sell these 45mm long LM8UUs, and these are really nice bearings. They're only about $4.50, but they ride so much better than the typical short bearings that you find. So what I did is I basically decided that since this is a longer bearing and it rides so much smoother, it's very nice on the rod, that what you can do is simply take your bearing blocks, and there's actually a C-ring there, you'll see. So you take a pair of C-ring pliers, and that's an internal ring, so you actually have to squeeze those 2 holes together. That C-ring will come out, and the bearings simply press out. That's actually where all these bearings came from. Then what you do is you actually take the block. Now this particular one I did modify, and we'll get to that in a second, but basically what I did is I just slid the new bearing down through the hole, and then I had some extra C-rings, and basically I put outside C-rings on. So basically I happen to have some rubber O-rings, so I put a rubber O-ring as a spacer, then the C-ring, and I did that on both sides to just kind of capture it in there. And this is a much lighter bearing setup, but it is so smooth. I mean, this is just silky smooth. And so what I've done is both removed the moving mass and also just improved the bearing, and it really, you know, we're looking at maybe $10 in parts here that I had lying around. Very easy mod to do. Now, one thing I did find was that the original bearing blocks, as it sat, would actually rub the top of the X-axis belt. So what I did is I went ahead and I looked at how the screws are going into the bearing block and the depth. And basically what I did is I just took it on a bandsaw. I just have a portable bandsaw. And all I did was hold the block and basically cut down the side of it, basically in the alignment of the holes. You'll see where the original holes are. And they're still threaded in the bottom, so there's enough to capture the threads of the bolts as it attaches. There's enough meat still in the block to be able to hold the bearing, but basically what I did is I made clearance for the belt. And as you can see here, I've got a ton of clearance for my X belt now. No rubbing, no issues whatsoever. This is just a really nice mod, and honestly you could do this with a hand hacksaw. You don't need power tools to do this kind of stuff. It does make it easier, don't get me wrong, but this is the kind of stuff that really takes the printer from being good to unbelievably good. I mean, this thing is probably going to be one of the best printers I have in the house, just based on a couple simple mods of adding Astrosyn dampers. You know, I had to block the rods off, ensuring that the alignment of the belt pass is right. Simple, just an easy way to just make better bearings, lighter weight on the X-axis. I still have all the precision, and this thing is just going to be a dream as I put this back together.